Check the description for the following discount codes.
Slightly different video today. We're going to be doing some PC hardware upgrades. Kingston got in touch and said, Carl, if we send you a couple of our Nvme drives, and if you're not familiar with what Nvme drives are, they are the sort of current fastest method of storage, faster than your normal SSD and much faster than a mechanical hard drive. So if we send you a couple of these over, could you feature them in a video? You know, just showing the benefits of NVMe over SSD or a physical hard drive. And I said, well, yeah, okay, why not? You know, it's kind of interesting, it's techie. I do like this sort of thing. Hopefully you guys might too. Now, the advantages of NVMe for us as VR users, gamers, sim racers are at the moment relatively limited. It comes down to the initial loading time of both your Windows operating system and whatever VR game, sim racing title, or what other game you might be loading times, how quickly they load from the moment you click them. And obviously, the faster your PC boots, the faster your games load, the better. But it doesn't really affect the experience we get whilst playing the game, whether we're in VR, whether it's in a sim, whatever that might be, until you get to a point in a game or a sim title where it needs to load an asset during gameplay. And by an asset, I mean maybe some textures or the next level, you know, or some more visuals, you know, the sort of long draw distances as you're moving down the rally stage and it's drawing more of it. If you're in Microsoft Flight Sim with a ridiculous, you know, view distance and draw distance, all those assets are being loaded from whatever storage medium you might have. So the faster that storage medium is, the faster those textures or graphics or whatever it might be can load up, and you will get less sort of in-game stutters or micro stutters as things are loading. And if it's like you get to the end of a level, VR is a good example here. If you're playing something like Medal of Honor, when you get to the end of a level, you physically have to stand there and look at a static loading screen, and the frame rate often tanks whilst it's doing this. And whilst there isn't anything going on, people who are a little sensitive to motion sickness, which includes me, can make us feel a little bit ill because you've got this static image, and if you actually have an FPS counter up, it can drop as low as like 5 to 10 FPS whilst these screens are loading. And they can be there for 30 seconds sometimes, you know, and if you move your head around a little bit, it just makes you feel a bit, not very nice. So the faster or the more you can reduce those loading times, the better. And again, faster storage drives, NVMEs in this case, can help with that. So I thought, yeah, all right, this could be kind of interesting. So you might be wondering why I'm standing in the front room by my TV. In the front room here, I do have another gaming PC. My main one is upstairs where my sim rig is. The one I've got down here is for playing controller-based games on the sofa, on my TV, for doing two-player VR stuff with my Mrs. Katie. I might be upstairs, push the sofa out the way, and she might be down here, less things to bump into when you're in virtual reality, slightly bigger play space. We've both got Quest 2s. So if we're using PC VR wirelessly over Airlink, for example, there is a PC in this room. And you might be wondering where it is, Carl. Well, here's the funny part to this story. When we moved in here, we didn't want, Katie particularly, a visible PC in the front room. They can be a bit ugly, look a bit out of place. We wanted to keep things clean and tidy. So I said, don't worry, Katie, I've got an idea. I'm going to put the PC in a flap behind some furniture. She said, what? I said, just follow with me here. So behind this flap here is my front room gaming PC. And so what we have in here is literally the motherboard just sat on an anti-static bag at the bottom there. My sound card that goes to my home theatre amp, which is in this other flap to the left-hand side here, along with the Quest 2. It just sat in the PCI slot. RTX 2080 just sat in its slot. There's a mechanical hard drive here to the right, and just laying at the back there is an old SSD, 0.5 terabyte. And then there's a power supply right at the back. Now the back of this cabinet is completely open, so there is reasonable airflow. I don't get any thermal throttling before somebody goes, oh Carl, it's going to be terrible for airflow. Yes it is, but it still works and I don't get any throttling, so who cares? So that's where my PC is. So what I'm going to do is pull that out, put it on the puff here in the middle and just get those drives swapped over and show you how to do it. Before I do that, I'm going to do a crystal Diskmark benchmark to show us the speed of my current drives. And then once we do the upgrade, we'll see just how much faster the new drives are. I'll also show you how to clone your original drive, because obviously I don't have to do a fresh install of Windows just for the sake of swapping a drive over. There's no need. So I'll use a tool to clone my original install straight onto the new Nvme drive. And I'll show you how to do all that as well. So let's get started. I feel slightly like a school teacher standing here with a blackboard beside me giving a lesson to a class. But this is crystal Diskmark. This is what I'm going to use to benchmark my two drives. Now my C drive is an SSD, an old SSD, and we'll do that one first. And I may as well benchmark my E drive, which is a mechanical drive as well. So let's get these done. I'll just speed it up rather than stand here waffling too much. But basically it's going to run through 4 different tests, read and write, and give us the benchmarks for each drive. And then I'll make a note of these. Well, they're in the video, so I won't need to make a note of them. I can refer back to them afterwards once we put the new Nvme drives in from Kingston and see what the difference is. Now we should see somewhere, and it's going to be motherboard dependent, somewhere between like 4 and 10 times the speed increase, both for reading and writing, something along those lines. It varies depending on your NVMEs. It will vary depending on your motherboard. My motherboard in this is, now what motherboard is it? It's an MSI Mortar B350M, I believe. So it's actually 2-3 years old now. Certainly not the current 500 series chipset. So that isn't as fast as it could be, but this is my front room PC, or my flap PC, as I like to call it, because it's hidden behind a flap. So yeah, your results will vary a little bit, but what we can see here already is that the read speeds of my old SSD are quite slow. You can actually get mechanical drives that will read almost the same speed as that. In fact, when I do the mechanical drive one, because that's a relatively recent mechanical drive, we may even see similar figures because this is an old SSD, and I think they're very roughly what the sort of quoted figures are on the spec for it when I bought it maybe 8 years ago, something like that. So it is old. But yeah, we'll skip to the end of this test and then we'll go to the mechanical drive as well. So the tests are all finished on this old SSD. Ori just wanted to come and say hello in this video. The fast is, so there's like 4 different types of read and 4 different types of write test. And the fastest we've seen on the read is 556, as you can see there, and the fastest we get on the write is 465. So about what I'd expect for the old SSD that it is. So just bear those figures in mind now. Let's flick over to my relatively new mechanical drive and do the same tests again and see just how that compares to an old SSD. And I think we'll probably get similar results because they're both running over serial ATA. So they're both capped at sort of 600, 650 meg a second, something along those lines. So be interesting to see what we actually get. Well, these results have actually really surprised me. I could have swore that the last time I ran Crystal Diskmark upstairs on my other PC, my main PC, the mechanical drive in there gave similar results to the old SSD that's now in here, because it was this SSD that did start out life in my upstairs PC. I'm sure that the mechanical drive up there actually gave similar results, but the one we've got in here, as you can see, is much, much slower. 50% or almost 60% slower in the read test there. So I'm a little shocked by that. I don't know whether perhaps, I don't know, I wouldn't have bought a really cheap drive. Although, I mean, this is only the front room PC, it isn't that important, but I'm sure it's at least like a Seagate Barracuda or something kind of just, you know, normal. But that I think is a lot lower than I was expecting. But never mind, all the more reason to upgrade to some faster drives. So there's our benchmarks to begin with. Now let's get this flat PC out and over here, and I'll walk you through installing the NVMe's, and also I'll explain another benefit to NVMe drives that's going to hopefully come out going forwards in the next year or so, and then we'll see eventually, you know, how they perform. Now this is literally how it sits inside my flap in that piece of furniture there. We've just got this USB header here, so I've got Bluetooth dongle for some wireless Sega Saturn and Mega Drive controllers, and then the dongle for my Xbox controller, and then we've got my sound card sat there, and then my graphics card sat here. The CPU is a 3800X, and we've got, I think, 32 gig of DDR4 HyperX RAM there as well. Now, my NVMe the drives I was currently running, so the old SSD was a Crucial M550, and that's what we see those sort of 550, coincidentally, megasecond read speeds from, that one. And then the mechanical drive was a Seagate Barracuda, 2 terabyte jobby, and this will be going back in there because it's still useful for storage and it isn't very old, even though the performance does seem to be less than I was expecting. But nevertheless, we won't worry about that. So I think I've got 2 NVMe slots on this motherboard, so I'm just going to pop out my sound card. And this is the benefit of running a PC sat on an anti-static bag in a flap in a piece of furniture, is everything's really easy to get to. So let's get the graphics card out. There's always this slightly awkward clip at the back of graphics cards. There it is. Much easier to get out when it's not actually in a computer. So there's my 2080 RTX. And I have now got access to, yes, 2 NVMe slots. Now, they are, in fact, I'll just move that out of the way as well. On this motherboard, and this obviously will vary from motherboard to motherboard, I've got one here at the bottom there and one here as well. Now I believe the top one doesn't share PCI Express lanes with the graphics card. So that would be, I don't know if that would be the preferred. If you only had one, that's the one you would put it in. But I've got 2, so it doesn't really make any difference. And I've got 2, these are the 2 drives. We've got a KC 2500 from Kingston and an A2000 from Kingston. They're both 1 terabyte drives. The A2000 is slightly slower. So I'm going to make that my operating system drive, and I'm going to have the slightly faster one, the KC 2500, as my gaming drive. Because once my operating system's loaded, the main drive doesn't tend to do that much. It's more, in this, what we're doing here is more about trying to get the games to load faster, both initially and in game as well. And talking about games loading faster, you may or may not have heard of Microsoft Direct Storage. And this is something relatively new, whereby data will be transferred directly from your NVMe drive to your GPU, relieving stress on your CPU, so freeing up some CPU power there, and reducing the speed or the time at which it takes to load that information from your drive to your GPU. It literally removes one part of the link, it's through the CPU. So games load faster, in-game content loads faster, and you free up CPU cycles. Now this is something that initially was only going to be supported on Windows 11. They have now backtracked on that, and you literally just slot this in. There's nothing exciting to see here. They've now backtracked on that, and they are going to do it with Windows 10. You need the a current up-to-date version of Windows 10. You just get a little screw to screw it down with. And you need at least PCI Express 3.0 for this to be supported, and a 1 terabyte SSD. Now, if you run Windows 11, you do actually get slightly better performance still. But it's all kind of irrelevant at the moment because game developers need to, at least this is my understanding of it, game developers need to support this. And until they support it, whether you've got the hardware there or not, doesn't make any difference. So it's going to be something that hopefully we'll see being taken advantage of going forward. And so you need Windows 10 current version, up to date, a 1 terabyte NVMe, PCI Express version 3.0 or above, and a DirectX 12 compatible graphics card. So that, I've literally just installed the first drive there. You just slot it in and put one little screw in, and that's it. So I don't want to stick the other one in as well. You can see how easy this is. I know other YouTubers may have got an overhead camera and stuff like that, but I haven't got one of those, and it's not that important. If you can't figure out how to slot a stick in and put a screw in, probably shouldn't be trying to upgrade your NVMe drives anyway. But yeah, so hopefully going forward, having NVMe drives will give us actual measurable in-game performance advantages. And for things, you know, even now, for things like VR, where you don't want to be sitting there looking at static loading screens, you know, with a tanked FPS, like in the Medal of Honor example I gave earlier. Even now, this is going to give us a little bit of a boost there. You know, and our PCs will boot faster, and everything we load will load a little bit quicker as well. Now, there will be some links to these drives in the description, should you want to grab them. I mean, obviously, we'll see what their performance is like in a little while once I've cloned my drive over. But yeah, there we go. That's both my NVMe drives installed on the motherboard, one top, one bottom. And yeah, now it's just down for me to reinstall my graphics card, which is going to take all of about 2 seconds because the PC is not in anything. It's quite funny. I've actually, it's such an easy way to have a PC. Like, there's the graphics card installed, sound card installed. So all I've got to do now, put it back in the flap there, plug the cables in. So yeah, let me get that done, and then I'll show you how to clone your original drive, whatever it might be, whether it's mechanical or SSD, over to a new NVMe drive, and then we'll run the benchmarks on both of these new NVMe drives. And hopefully we'll see them performing a lot faster than the drive that I've just taken out. And obviously this one, even though it's going back in as a storage device. Otherwise, this whole video will be pointlessly sponsored by Kingston and their hopefully performing well SSDs, NVMe, sorry. So yeah, let's get that back together. So we're back at the blackboard now. Both the drives are installed, as you see me do a minute ago. I put it all back in the flap, plugged it all back in, everything's fine. Now, when you first open up your PC, or this PC it's called these days, you'll still only see, in my case, my original SSD and my 2 terabyte mechanical drive. And you might, don't panic and go, why aren't my NVMe drive showing up? Maybe I've done something wrong. You haven't done something wrong. What you need to do is go to Disk Management Tool in Windows. So press Start and just type Disk, and we should see create and format hard disk partitions there. That should bring up the Disk Management Tool, and it prompts us straight away that we need to initialize these 2 new disks. They are, of course, our NVMe drives. So let's click OK. We'll let them do that. And we should now have them. Obviously, we haven't formatted them yet, so they're going to be unallocated. They may now show up in our PC. No, not yet. Okay, so let's format them or activate them or whatever the hell it is we have to do. Allocate them. Yeah, new simple volume. Okay, yeah, that's cool. I'm literally doing this all from memory like on the fly sort of thing. You assign it a drive letter, you could obviously change that if you wanted it to, and we'll just let it do its thing. It should be, hopefully, pretty fast, being an NVMe drive. So we'll let it do that, and then there we go. So that's that one done. Now let's do the other one as well. New symbol volume, next, next. This one's obviously going to be drive F, and perform quick format, and away we go. Yeah, so once it's done this, we should now see them in our this PC window. So yeah, here we go. We've now got the 2 additional drives. So that's great. So the next thing we want to do then is clone, in my case, my old SSD, my Crucial SSD, over onto the A2000 Kingston drive. Now I use a program called Macrium Reflect. It's free. You have to put your email in and register it, and they give you like a free key to use, and that will let you do the cloning that we need to do. So that's what I'm going to load up here. We've got all our different drives. It's my Barracuda drive there. That is my Crucial drive. It literally says it here. That's the one we want to clone. So we're going to click on that when I can find my mouse cursor. There it is. And now we've got the option, clone this disk. Hopefully this shows up on the camera, otherwise I should have probably screen grabbed it, but it's easy enough to follow anyway. Click on the drive you want to clone. Clone this disk appears immediately underneath it. Click on that, and we come up here, and it shows you all the different partitions on that drive, because Windows has a couple of different partitions for various different things. You want to leave them all ticked, because obviously you want it to clone precisely bit for bit, so that when you then unplug this old SSD, the new NVMe drive that you've cloned this onto sort of takes its place and it all works fine. So leave them ticked. Next we come down to here and we select a disk to clone to. So let's do that. And we want to choose so here's a Kingston SKC 2500. That was a slightly faster drive. So we don't want to do it to that one. We want to do it to the A2000, which is this drive down here. So let's just click on that, and that should be all we need to do, I think. So copy selected partitions when I click next is ticked. All 4 of those partitions are done. We've got some other options here, copy, erase, delete. We're not going to do any of those, we just leave it as it is. I think we just click next, and then you can schedule it if you wanted to schedule it for some reason, which of course we don't want to do. So we click next again, and then just double check here your source drive. In my case, the Crucial M550 is the one, is our source drive. That's correct. You've got your different partitions there in the list on that drive. And then we should be copying it to the destination drive, wherever that might be. It doesn't actually tell me the name of the destination drive, or if I just scroll past it. Oh, right, no, sorry. It's up here immediately under the source disk. So yeah, make sure that is, in this case, my Kingston A2000. So yeah, source, destination, that's obviously correct. That's me scrolling down here for no reason. And then we should just click finish. Run this backup now, because essentially you're cloning it, you're backing it up is what it believes you're doing. Save the backup schedules and XML backup definition file. No, there's no need to do that, because we're not going to do it again. It's just going to be a one-off operation. And I believe we just click OK, and away we go. Here is our current progress bar. So, oh yeah, all target volume data will be overwritten, confirmed to proceed. So yes, click that, sorry, and then click continue, and now it will do it. So I'll leave this doing this. Be interesting how long it takes. And then when we come back, hopefully I'll be stood here running from the new NVMe drive with Crystal Diskmark up, ready to do a benchmark and see just how fast it is. Now I'm not going to clone my mechanical drive onto the other NVMe drive, the KC 2500. I'm going to leave that blank, and that's where I'm going to move my Steam library to later on, and where I'm going to install new games to as well. And my 2 terabyte one will just be used as a storage medium, you know, films and what have you, because this is the front room. It's where I have my home theatre. setup. So we'll leave that doing that, and I'll be back with you in a second. Fingers crossed, it all goes smoothly. That took about 25 minutes to clone, so not too bad. Here is the old Crucial Drive out, and this is literally the first boot of the new SSD. Now, my gut tells me I should probably do at least one restart, but I'm not going to. I'm going to fire up Crystal Diskmark and just bench it straight away. I have a feeling that even though the drive is cloned, so, you know, it's identical in theory to the original one, that maybe after a restart, there's even a couple of little things that Windows might just tweak or adjust. Oh, actually, that's an interesting point. It's only showing up as half the size because it has cloned it identically. So now I should be able to come into here, and there should be, yes, some unallocated space. So we're back in Disk Manager here. Now, can I... There is a way to join these together. I think I have to make it its own drive first. So let's just do that. And then I think we can merge these two together. How do I do that? No. Okay, well that's something I need to do afterwards. I can't actually remember how to do it. And now we can't select them both. What else can we do here? Change driver letter format, shrink volume. No, I can't remember how to do that right now, so I'll have to Google it. But yeah, obviously the cloning has taken place and there's some leftover space there. I'm sure we can amalgamate those. But let's just continue with our benchmark, because that is, of course, really what we're here for. And we'll see just how much faster. So we're going to choose the C drive, which of course is our new NVMe, and we'll run the test to see just how much quicker it is than the old SSD, which of course was what, about 550 we got as the fastest read. I can't remember what the write was, 4 something or another, but we'll let this do its thing and see just how fast it is. Already, in fact, look, it's 3 times quicker on the first test. So let's let this finish and see exactly how it does. So we're looking at about 3 times quicker, both for the read and the writes. Now I'm sure my NVMe drive upstairs on my other PC hits nigh on 3,000 on the read and like 2,500 on the write. And that actually shares the same motherboard as this, which is actually it's a B450M mortar from MSI, not the B350M. Oh, and that's another interesting point. With these motherboards, if you put 2 NVMe drives in, when you put the second drive in, you actually sacrifice the ability to use your 4th PCI Express slot, which for me is what my sound card was plugged into. So I've got to use a different PCI Express slot to put the sound card into. But this is the first of the 2 drives they sent me. This is the slower one. And the drive I've got upstairs for comparison is a Sabrent Rocket something or another. It was the fastest one I could buy. So it might just be that this is a slower drive, the one upstairs is much quicker. But we'll now do the faster of the 2 drives, the one that I'm actually going to, I mean, it's basically finished, so we'll just stop it there. Yeah, the faster of the 2 drives that Kingston sent, which should be, yeah, my D drive here. This is the one that I'll actually use for gaming down here. So we'll see whether this one is actually any faster than the previous one. Oh, and also, that's a good point, I just had a quick Google how to merge those partitions together. So we'll go back to our disk management tool here in Windows, and we should just come down here to the one that I recently formatted a second ago that's actually sort of still empty, and delete this volume. And let's just look at this and make sure I'm doing it before I screw something up. Yep, delete that volume, because the one that's left is drive C. That's the one we cloned. And then we should be able to right click and extend volume. There we go. Yes, and just then you leave that to what it's set to, and it's now going to extend it into the allocate space. So now we haven't got an unnecessary partition on my C drive that I didn't need. It now just shows as one big drive. So nice and simple to do. I knew it was something easy, I just couldn't remember what it was straight away. Okay, this is what we're talking about. This is the faster of the two drives. So 3,500 megabits a second on the read. This is more like what I'm used to seeing and what I would expect. So that is, 6 times faster than what the original Crucial drive was. And that's an interesting, thing to note there as well, is the difference between those two Kingston drives. This one is literally, well, twice as quick, two and a bit times faster than the previous one. So I'm assuming the writes will be equally as impressive as well, but we'll let them do that and see just where it all finishes. Well, the writes are still finishing, but you can already see the first test is complete and we're hitting over 3,000 megasecond on the write as well. So this goes to show the difference between those two NVMe drives that I was sent is actually quite substantial. And this is the one I've chosen to be the gaming drive, because as I mentioned earlier, I want the loading times in the game to be minimal. When they're loading assets in on the fly, we want that to be minimal, and particularly in VR, assets or in between level loading times as quick as possible to reduce motion sickness or any potential glitches or hang-ups. So thanks to Kingston for sending over these drives. It's been quite fun having a little play around today. And so what have we learned from this scholastic lesson with the blackboard behind me here? We've learned that yes, NVMe drives are definitely a lot quicker than SSDs over serial ATA, and obviously even faster than mechanical drives. And we've also learned that should your missus tell you can't have a PC in the front room, tell her to open her flaps, prepare to be impressed with just how easily you can hide a PC inside a piece of furniture. As always, thank you very much for watching and take it easy.